Welcome back, everyone. This is Dave from Cormorant Productions, here to talk about This Is Us, Season 4, Episode 13, titled A Hell of a Week Part 3, the conclusion of the Big 3 Trilogy. And in answer to the question that we've been asking since the first episode of this trilogy, will Jack get any sleep on this night? I say that partly in jest, but it is a legit concern of the trilogy. Since this got delayed, and I'm kind of behind, I'm doing this podcast style, with the only image seen throughout this video being the This Is Us logo. I've seen some YouTubers do videos like this, and this is a little bit of an experiment on my part. Feedback on your enjoyment of this podcast would be much appreciated. And I remind people that this is not a spoiler-free podcast. This episode was directed by series star Justin Hartley. It is not his directorial debut. He actually made that back in his Smallville days in 2011. But it is the first time that he's directed an episode in this series. And I would say he did a pretty nice job. There were a couple of scenes that really stood out to me. One being with the very, very young version of Kate, the 3-year-old version. During the scene when she was trying to catch fireflies, which earned her the name Bug by her mother. And then a scene between the adult Kate and the older Rebecca in the pool. Both were beautifully done scenes. The trilogy itself overall was pretty good. Easily some of the best episodes of this season. It reminded me a little bit of the movie Rashomon from the 1950s, which was about different perspectives and showing the same scenes from different characters' viewpoints. This has been a device that has been used by television and movies after that, but I don't think I've seen it in a 3-episode trilogy before. Granted, the only real scene that shows the different perspectives is that one scene in the kitchen with Rebecca and the 3 teens. This one focuses on Kate, and it is easily my favorite Kate story of the series. One small beef that I have with the episode is the fact that Kate's story does not tie in with all her various timelines as much as Kevin's and Randall's episodes did. Unless I'm missing something, Mark does not equal Toby. Toby is not in any way abusive. If there is a connection and I'm just missing it, feel free to leave a comment and let me know. We begin this episode with Jack and the 3-year-old Kate, who is also having trouble sleeping, just like her brothers. She wants her mother to tell her a story, but of course she's unavailable because she's sick. And she will not take Jack as a substitute. So he has her tell a story instead, with his help, of course. I don't have much to say about this thread, like I didn't have much to say about Kevin's 3-year-old story arc last week, so I'm going to leave it here once again. The beginning of adult Kate's storyline starts with Toby and her in bed, and Toby is researching a girl who happened to get 30% of her sight back, which Kate says is not going to work on Jack. The girl that Toby is looking at has a disease that Jack does not have, and the girl does not have the damaged eye situation that Jack has. They are supposed to go on a retreat for blind kids that Toby seems uninterested in going to. And look, Toby, I feel for you, man. Really, I do. This is a tough situation, but at some point you need to accept reality. And the reality is, your son is mostly blind. And again, this really doesn't feel like Toby to me. It feels like borderline character assassination. This isn't the Toby that dumped his antidepressants down the toilet at great risk to his own mental health. Nor is it the Toby that was heavily there for Kate in the aftermath of her miscarriage. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this is a legitimate reaction to having a son who's unfortunately blind. Maybe Toby just hasn't adjusted to that fact yet. I mean, I don't know how I would react to this situation, because I've never been in it. But to borrow a line from Rocky from Creed 2, which by the way happens to star Milo Ventimiglia, you shouldn't feel sorry for the baby, because the baby is not spending time feeling sorry for itself. My sense was that early in the season, Toby joined CrossFit so that he could be there longer for his son, so that he could live healthier and live longer. But you're not doing him any good if you blow up your marriage in the process and are not being available to your son, which for most of the season you haven't been. Now, if and when their marriage goes belly up, and it seems to be heading that direction, it won't be entirely Toby's fault. I haven't been thrilled with either Toby or Kate this season. But Toby isn't helping matters here. He's failing to be there for his son and his wife. And in this episode, I get the sense that he knows it. We cut to the teen Kate timeline with both Mark, her new boyfriend, and herself working at the record store. It's a refreshing change of pace to see Kate acting all cute and happy and in love. It's just too darn bad that it's for Mark, who shows himself to be pretty crappy. Kate invites him to Rebecca's dinner party that's supposed to happen later that night, and all but begs him to go. He says he's not sure because her brothers are going to be there, and her brothers stress him out because they don't like him. I only recall Kevin expressing any kind of opinion, and yes, Kevin does not like him. I don't remember Randall saying anything. After some cajoling, Mark finally gives in and agrees to go. Mark gets asked a question by a customer looking for an album, and he talks a little while about it, and then Kate contradicts the knowledge that Mark is passing on to the customer, which seems to make Mark mad. And without saying anything, Kate picks up on it. Cut to another Kate and Toby scene with Kate packing to go to the retreat. Toby is basically making excuses as to why he can't go, though he's not directly saying so, talking about how he has all these projects at work. And Kate very directly calls him out on it. Which is when the older Rebecca calls. And this is actually the first time that we are seeing the older Rebecca in this trilogy. Kate tells her mother that Toby isn't going to be able to go because of a work thing, and Rebecca quickly takes his place. Here's where I kind of related to Toby, in that he's screwing up, he knows he's screwing up, but at the same time, he can't seem to stop. While she talks to Rebecca, he's trying to say something to fix things, and she just kind of waves him off. Given how well he's doing so far this episode, I doubt it would have helped much. Back to the teen Kate timeline, where Kate is trying to call Mark about a few thousand times. When he finally answers, they get into a fight, and Kate is desperately trying to understand why. This scene is the one and only perspective change in the trilogy, as we see the same scene where Randall is having nightmares and about to tell Rebecca but doesn't, and then teen Kevin shows up. But this time we are seeing it through Kate's perspective, and following Kate around as she's having this fight. Eventually Mark says that it bugged him that she was showing off for that guy, and showing up Mark, and it embarrassed him, and like an idiot he raged out. That's his explanation. And that seems to be the end of the argument. Rebecca knocks on the door to check on Kate, and Kate claims to be fine. Rebecca says that she's been busy and feels like she's missed out on Mark, and she would actually like to meet him. Kate tells her that he will be there at the dinner party, but Rebecca has something a little bit more intimate in mind, getting coffee beforehand. Kate seems reluctant, but eventually Rebecca gets her to agree to it. Cut to Kate and Rebecca at the retreat. And the funny thing is, there seems to be a almost manic desperation in Mandy Moore's portrayal of Rebecca here. And I think that's almost entirely a reaction to her illness. Kate definitely notices this and jokingly asks her mother if she's on the drugs, and that's an exact phrasing, by the way. It's a weird phrasing and a weird question because it's not very specific as to what drugs she's talking about, but anyway, it was a joke, so it doesn't matter. Rebecca denies it, of course, saying that she's simply excited to be there with them. We are then cutting back to the teen timeline with Kate and Rebecca at the diner, waiting for Mark. Kate says that none of them like Mark, and she knows it. Rebecca denies it, but Kate says that she knows that he can be a little intense sometimes, but he's going through a lot. In other words, she's making excuses for his behavior. And Rebecca basically promises that she will keep an open mind. Mark comes flying in, clearly agitated because his car was having issues, and he doesn't make a very good impression right off the bat. It's only after Kate makes a cute face at him that he realizes that he's not doing very well. He apologizes and makes a reference that Kate enjoys with him, and they both laugh together. He then reveals that he quit the record store, which Kate knew nothing about, and when you are dating someone, you usually try to share that information. But two things about that. One, this is a relatively new relationship, and I get the feeling that they haven't been in relationships that much, especially not Kate. The second thing is they don't quite have cell phones back at this point. Rebecca has a frozen smile on her face the entire time, and it's clear she's not quite clicking with Mark. She doesn't really like him, though she is trying. Mark brings up Kate and her going to the cabin, the family cabin, and Rebecca is surprised by this and notes that they haven't opened it up yet. Kate says that they could open it up. We cut back to Kate and Rebecca at the retreat, and what we see of it is actually pretty awesome. We see a blind kid using a series of clicking sounds, otherwise known as human echolocation, to ride a bicycle. I've actually read about humans using echolocation, using a series of clicks, before, and it is actually pretty cool to see this presented in a television show. If you're looking for hope, Toby, this is where you find it. Cut back to a kitchen scene with Rebecca and the teen Kate. Rebecca is saying that she's not comfortable with Kate going to the cabin with Mark. Kate immediately assumes that this is a double standard because Kevin is off with Sophie, married in New York. Randall is doing God knows what with Beth at college, so she should be allowed to go to the cabin with Mark. So for Kate, it comes down to the fact that Rebecca just doesn't like Mark. Rebecca tries to be diplomatic here, but what it comes down to is she doesn't like Mark. Not really. And she doesn't trust him. Her gut is telling her that Mark is not good for Kate. But she's not going to say any of this, of course. And Kate, if everybody in your life is telling you the same thing, maybe you should consider the possibility that you're the one that's wrong. Especially when it comes to situations like this. Kate tells her that after Dad died, she didn't think she was going to be happy again. Rebecca says that she understands, but Kate doesn't believe that she does. Rebecca, she says, has had boys falling all over her entire life. And she's not wrong. And I'm sure Mandy Moore herself has had that experience. Kate claims that Mark is the first guy that has ever been interested in her. And I don't buy it. Teen Kate is cute to me, and I'm pretty convinced that she would have guys that would be interested in her. But here's the thing. When you have a crappy self-image, as Kate does, and I did, you tend to ignore or deny anything that doesn't fit into your narrative. In fact, we all do this. We all have narratives and tend to ignore evidence to the contrary. My narrative back in high school was that no girl was ever interested in me. And that's not true. There were girls that were interested in me. But when they expressed that interest, I would instantly lose interest and start pursuing somebody that I had absolutely no chance with whatsoever. Or I would find some way to screw it up real quick. before it had a chance to become anything. But my narrative would continue to be that no girl was interested in me, and that was simply not true. And I think because of Kate's crap self-image, she's had body image problems her entire life, that she basically does the same thing. There probably were guys that were interested in her, and she simply didn't see it, because her self-image would not allow her to do so. Kate gets really mean real quick, and basically tells Rebecca that she's not going tomorrow, she's gonna go now, and she apologizes, though not sincerely, if that ruins her dinner plans. And then Kate throws Miguel in Rebecca's face, which is interesting, because this is long before Rebecca and Miguel became a thing. And I'm curious if that was the opinion of her children at the time, that Miguel was kind of moving in on Rebecca even here. It also raises the question for me, when exactly did Miguel fade out of their lives? Because when they were adults, we saw that the older Rebecca got in touch with Miguel after Randall became a father. So I am getting increasingly curious as to when Miguel disappeared out of the picture. I saw some comments from the fandom that Kate is an awful human being for how she acted in this scene. No, she's just being a typical teenager. We cut to the present day timeline with Kate and Rebecca. Kate is on the phone with who Rebecca assumes is Toby, but it's not. It's her neighbor Gregory. Gregory is played by Timothy Amundsen, and he's an interesting story. The actor suffered from a stroke, and so did the character as well. According to an interview that I dug up, the actor's progress is about the same as where the character currently is. It's in this scene that Kate finally admits to Rebecca that things are not good between her and Toby. In response, Rebecca tells her to get on her bathing suit, they're going to the pool. Doesn't matter that the pool is probably closed. Kate is reluctant because of her body issues, and Rebecca says, "You're fat, I'm ancient, we're both gorgeous." Some people had a problem with that line, thinking that it was insensitive. Others found the line to be incredibly beautiful. As for me, I did not have a problem with the line. We then cut to the pool scene, which, all in all, was just beautifully done. Beautifully directed, beautifully acted by Chrissy Metz and Mandy Moore. So really, we have both the scenes that stood out for me from Justin Hartley right here, because we have a brief flashback to that ladybug scene that I was talking about earlier, during which we learn how Kate got her nickname Bug from Rebecca. There are two ways in which I connect to Kate. I don't have her body weight issues, but I do have her awkwardness, and her self-consciousness, and her shaky self-esteem. This scene is also the clearest example of what I found so refreshing with this episode, in that Kate and Rebecca are getting along here. And that hasn't always been the case. There's always been a little bit of tension in their relationship since the beginning of the series. Here, Kate reveals that she's worried if she tells Toby that he needs to step up, that one, he won't ever really, and that it'll blow up their marriage. And Rebecca tells her if that's the case, she is fully able to take care of Jack on her own. But she believes in Toby. She believes he will come around. And for the record, so do I. I don't necessarily believe in the direction that they've taken his character at this point, but I believe that Toby will turn it around. Sometimes we do take the wrong path. Sometimes we don't do the right thing and do what we should. But I believe that Toby will eventually get his head out of his butt and start doing what he needs to do. We then cut back to the teen timeline with Mark and Kate in the car on the way to the cabin singing a song together. It initially is a fun scene that quickly turns scary. Kate says that she's bummed that Mark quit the record store job, and Mark suggests that she quit, which she says she's not gonna do. This sets Mark off and makes him angry, and then all of a sudden he's driving out of control, scaring the crap out of Kate and myself. This scene stressed me out hardcore and was almost triggering to my anxiety. I of course knew nothing was going to happen to Kate, but plenty of bad things could happen. Mark eventually stops the car, kicks Kate out of his car, insults her, and then peels off. Whoa. I've seen a few comments from the fandom that Mark is not abusive, he's bipolar. I'm not sure what evidence they're drawing from, because the show definitely doesn't tell us that. And as a mental health advocate, I'm more than a little annoyed at people using mental illness issues as an excuse to be abusive. I'm sorry, but it's just not. And even if he were bipolar, it definitely does not excuse leaving a 19-year-old girl out in the middle of nowhere. It does not excuse his actions here, because anything could have happened to her. She could have been picked up and murdered for all he knew. At any rate, there is no evidence for a bipolar diagnosis here. We cut back to the present day timeline, where Rebecca is finally revealing her illness to Kate. And honestly, I'm glad that they did not drag this particular plotline on forever. This is another scene that Christy Metz and Mandy Moore just totally knock out of the park. Rebecca says that the diagnosis has actually made her more powerful, because really she has nothing left to lose. So she's been more fun, and not sweating the small stuff as much. This leads into the duet at karaoke night that Rebecca was suggesting at the beginning of the episode. Cut to the teen timeline once again. Kate is shivering and finds a payphone and calls her mom. She apologizes for the things that she said to her earlier, and Rebecca senses something is wrong. Kate is about to tell her that things are not okay and what's going on when Mark drives up. He's got a blanket and he's apologizing. I honestly would have rather have seen Kate not get back in his car, but Kate's options at that point were telling her mom what was really going on, which she doesn't really want to do, and waiting for her mom to get there, or going with Mark and relying on him for safety. And honestly, who really knows what would have happened to her if she said no at that point, how Mark would have reacted. Also, in her mind, despite Mark's actions, she still believes that he loves her and that she loves him. She does not have the experience to recognize that this isn't love, this is control, this is abuse. And unfortunately, this isn't just an age thing, because women older than her still fall for this trap. Women twice her age still get into abusive relationships and are convinced that it's love when it's really not. Kate quickly hangs up the phone, but doesn't do a good enough job convincing Rebecca that she's okay. So when Kevin arrives at the house, she tells him that they need to go because Kate's in trouble. Though all she has is intuition, she doesn't have much to go on beyond recognizing in her voice that Kate is not okay. Which brings us to one of the final scenes, Kate and Toby. Kate arrives home, and you can see in Toby's bearing and the way he's talking that he knows he's been screwing up. Kate directly asks him, "Are you capable of doing this? Are you capable of being the man that I need you to be and the father that Jack needs?" His response is that he wants to be, which is a start, Toby. This conversation is interrupted by Kevin calling. Kevin, who is just waking up from having slept with Kate's best friend, Madison, and talking to Randall, who's had a hell of a week. She says it's not a good time because she's a step away from her marriage blowing up. And by the way, this scene actually makes me wrong. I forgot that this is also a scene that is shown from different perspectives, making it the second scene that we've seen from 3 different perspectives. And this response from Kate is a little melodramatic, as Toby and her are not in the middle of a fight. She thinks it's going to be a fight, but it isn't one yet. So while Kate is sort of taking Rebecca's advice, she's kind of not at the same time. She accepts the invite to the cabin and then goes back to talking to Toby. She says to him that she needs him to do more than try. She needs him to do. She says she's going to the cabin with Randall and Kevin, that she's taking Jack because she needs some space. But Toby says that he can watch Jack. Kate doesn't seem to think that's a good idea. But Toby has heard you, Kate. He has recognized that he hasn't been doing good enough. And he wants to spend time with his son, to bond with him, to be a better father, to be a better husband to you. He isn't fighting with you because he knows he was wrong. And he's asking for a chance, which Kate eventually grants him. We cut to the 3-year-old Kate, who's finally asleep, and Jack goes to bed. Rebecca asks him how it went, and he says, hey, it was a piece of cake. She calls him a hero. But Jack refutes that. It was just one night. She's the real hero. And the last shot we see is Rebecca and the 2 boys headed on to find out what's wrong with Kate and to possibly save her and be the hero that Jack thinks that she is. If you like this podcast, please like, share, comment, and subscribe to my channel. I'm interested in feedback in whether the podcast style of video works for you. Also, please check out my Kickstarter for Dave 2020 the movie. It'll be in the description of the video. Success would mean greater quality in my videos. Anyway, that's all I got for you today. This is Dave from Corman Productions, signing off.